G'day ladies and gents, welcome to War Thunder with Mags, and welcome aboard the Venom. So the Venom is one of the most heavily requested aircraft on my channel, and it's taken me a while to get a video of it up. The reason why is, since it was released, there have actually been one major patch release, and there's been multiple BR changes, which keeps changing the meta that this plane is involved in. No point showing you a video of something that doesn't happen particularly often anymore, so trying to get one that's current has been difficult. It's also been an issue with the flight model, which is why today's video is neither a first impressions or a review. First impressions, as I've said in the past, I always do on aircraft that are pretty much dead stock. This plane is only a couple of thousand RP short of being spaded. Now, the reason why it's not a review is I'm simply not confident enough in the operation of this aircraft in order to feel that I can accurately review it. I'm good in the machine, but the way its flight and damage model works prevents me from really being able to trust it, which is something that I like to have with my aircraft. I like to be able to trust them before I review them. So what's the problem with the Venom? Well, it comes down to how its flight and damage model operates and how that relates to its upgrades. First things first, the Venom's wings are made out of spun sugar glass. This is possibly the most fragile aircraft when it comes to maneuvers that I've encountered in War Thunder. And unfortunately, it doesn't get better with upgrades. When you first unlock the Venom, you'll notice immediately that pulling maneuvers at above 600 kilometers an hour, you run a real risk of breaking this thing's wings off, because it is so maneuverable and so fast accelerating, and its wings are so fragile, it's incredibly easy to break. Now, as you upgrade the aircraft over time, the aircraft slowly gets faster and more maneuverable. The wings upgrade increases its overall turn rates and maneuverability, the engines obviously increase its speed and its acceleration, so the plane gets faster, it gets better energy retention, and it gets more maneuverable. But the damage model doesn't change, so as you upgrade the plane, it gets easier and easier to break it. You have to be more and more gentle while flying it. If you don't, it'll snap its wings off. I'd say at least 70% or more of my deaths in this aircraft are a direct result of just trying to push the airframe that slight little bit too far and having it break on me, and not being shot down. Fully upgraded, you can actually tear the wings off this aircraft simply doing an aileron roll at over 680 kilometers an hour. As you can see here, I've just punched over 900 kilometers an hour, and you'll see how carefully I'm moving the mouse cursor. It's very, very gentle on all my movements. That is entirely because of how easily the wings are to break. In fact, this is exactly how I've managed to fly the plane competitively with this problem the way it currently exists. Once the plane exceeds about 650 kilometers an hour, I no longer use the keybinds, which I use on every other aircraft in order to control it. I fly the plane entirely on mouse. Now, the reason for this, when you move the mouse cursor just slightly, the control surfaces on the aircraft will make very slight, small movements, allowing you to maneuver around at excessive speeds without putting the Vampire's wings or the Venom's wings at risk. Now, when you use keybinds are an all or nothing thing. They're great to use on your aircraft if you are in a position where you can't break your wings, but when you press the pitch up keybind, it automatically and instantly applies maximum elevation to the aircraft. So, just taking the lead on this B-57, just lining up the shot. He's sitting right in the middle of my gun convergence, and there's the kill. So immediately nose up, start trading speed for altitude. I still have that P-80 on my 6, however, 2 fighters are on him, and yep, he's down, so tail is clear. Time to climb, get back into position and find next target. So yes, using the key bindings at high speeds is bad, but there is an interesting component to this. I know several people who fly exclusively with joystick, even in realistic battle, and I myself have taken the Venom out under stick and was able to find and confirm with them they can actually apply full elevation to the Venom at upwards of 800 kilometers an hour without breaking its wings on joystick. Now, the reason for this is because the key bindings immediately apply maximum force, you instantaneously get the full force of G's applied to the wings in one single hit with key bindings. With the joystick, you can gently pull back and apply that force over time. The damage model seems to respond better to this, so this is one of those aircraft that is actually a higher performance machine if you're using a joystick rather than using keyboard and mouse. You're able to do a lot more with this plane and fly it a lot more aggressively with a lesser risk of ripping it using the stick controls than you are using mouse and keyboard. But as for mouse and keyboard users, that is the best advice I can give to you. Once you pass about 600-650 kilometers an hour with this aircraft, take your hand off your key bindings and fly just with the mouse. The second you drop back below that 600-650, hands back on the key bindings, start throwing it around. It's quite safe at the speed I'm flying at now to use the key bindings, but as soon as I pass 600, as you can see here, this is all mouse now. I'm gently aileron rolling with keys, but nothing more, and once I pass 700 I refuse to do that. And there's the P80 down, and I take a snap at the second P80. Unfortunately I miss, only doing 390, so full elevation. Drop back in on its tail, start trying to chase it down. So there's my second kill of the match. So half a kilometre behind the P80, he's attempting to dive away, and this is where the upsides to the Venom come in. The Venom is the fastest jet fighter the British have access to. It's 50 kilometres an hour faster than the Meteor F8 in level flight, able to hit just over 1,000 kilometres an hour to the 950 that the Meteor F8 is capable of. And there's my third kill. The poor P80 pilot didn't really stand a chance in that situation. Nose up, go back for altitude, have another P80 behind, so I want to make sure I've got the altitude and I can dive back in. The Venom is also one of the fastest accelerating jets in the British tree and has an energy retention that is not far behind that of the Meteor F8. Overall, its high-speed performance is excellent. At sub-rip speed, so sub 600 kilometers an hour, it's also one of the most manoeuvrable aircraft in the British line. It's able to turn at an incredibly high rate, invert over into a dive, and I'm going back for this P80. He's attempting to make a run off the rest of the team and actually has a lead on them all. But he's not going to have a lead on me. There's 900 kilometers an hour. Coming in for the swoop. Apply air brakes for a short moment as I don't want to rip from overspeed. Lining up the shot. He's 1 kilometer out. 600 meters gun convergence. Now I'm on the deck, so I'm level flight now. As you can see, I'm holding my speed nicely. One long burst, I get a hit, no kill. Second burst in, and there's the explosion and fireball. Straight up, go back for altitude. Not that I really needed to, he was the last fighter remaining on this enemy team, so that is the end of this match. Let's go check out the results. So, second place for the team, and something appears to be missing from the looks. I've only got 3 kills and no assists, where I'm pretty sure I shot down 4 aircraft. 67,285 silver lions for this one, best squad, and pretty much all the standard rewards. 4,477 modification research points, and that is almost my GRC Mark 8 pylon upgrade complete, and that is the last upgrade the Venom currently needs. So the Venom, it's a great aircraft. I really do like it, but I hesitate to say I love it, and that is because of how fragile its wings are. This also becomes a problem when you get tiered up into CL-13 MiG-15 biz matches, which can happen with this aircraft. Because of how fragile its wings are, this machine, its combat speed is below that, or safe combat speed is below that of the aircraft that it's facing. Things like the MiG-15 biz and the CL-13, at least with its boosters removed, can maneuver at over 1,000 kilometers an hour without running a risk of breaking their wings, something the Venom just can't dream of doing, which puts it at a severe disadvantage. Most of those high-tier battles, I've actually killed myself in maneuvers trying to get shots on aircraft like CLs and MiG-15s, and all they've got to do to break you is pull tighter than you do, and you die. So next up on our list of heavily requested aircraft is the R2Y2 V2. Now, this aircraft is 6.7 430mm cannons. It is one of the lowest level Japanese jet aircraft available in the game. And, well, this one took a long while to get on the channel because it's a plane that I don't particularly like, and I'll explain why. Now, I will say first up, I do love its cockpit. It has incredible visibility, the gun sight is mounted nice and high, it gives you good visibility around it. All excellent for sim battle pilots looking to take this thing out. It's nice in that regard. The problem is it doesn't really feel much like a jet. At this point, my R2Y2 V2 is, well, it's almost fully upgraded. I've got the engine modifications, I've just got the cover and the guns left to go. Acceleration-wise, it's only slightly higher than that of an F8 F1B or a Tempest 2 in a dive. Actually, Tempest 2s can keep distance with you until you hit about 750 kilometers an hour and level out and maintain speed, where they start losing it. You have really big difficulties actually extending a gap. I got a Bearcat here who I don't think he actually saw me coming. First kill. The second part is its armaments. Now, you saw how close I got when I fired those 30mm cannons. These aren't so much cannons as they are shotguns mounted in the nose. At 600 meters convergence, aiming at a target 600 meters away, Using the measurement of the wingspan of a B-17, the spread is somewhere between 50 and 80 feet, depending on how lucky you are with your shots and how long your burst is. The spray on these things is huge. It may improve with the gun upgrades, I don't currently have them, but that makes it really hard to get those guns on target, especially when you consider that the Japanese 30mm are an incredibly low rate of fire, and they also are an incredibly low velocity round. They actually have slightly overall poorer performance than the machine cannon 108s equipped to German aircraft. However, then it comes into the third part I don't like about its Ford armament, the shell availability. At least the machine cannon 108s have access to German Minengeschoss rounds. The Japanese really don't have anything comparable. You've got the omni-purpose rounds. I've heard a number of people prefer the 30mm tracer belts, but really that's all you've got. And due to the netcode around 30mm guns for War Thunder, these guns spark heavily, which is also a major problem, and you'll see some examples of this very, very, very soon. Now, the R2Y2 is of course actually marked as a bomber, so what is its bomb load? Well, it carries a single 800 kilogram bomb, of which you get two varieties, and both are unlocked as soon as you get access to the aircraft. One is an 800 kilogram ground bomb, great for taking out targets on the ground, although you won't get a lot of usage out of it, as only some of the maps that you'll be fighting on actually have ground targets for you to bomb in your aircraft. The second one is an 800 kilogram AP bomb. Now, the AP bomb is designed for taking out shipping and is incredibly good at it. In fact, it can one-shot any ship in any map except a carrier. So, great bomb. Now, I'm trying to drop onto this F-84 Thunderjet, however I've had to pull out of the dive at 900 kilometers an hour. The R2Y2 is not equipped with air brakes, so it has no way of reliably slowing itself down. It will rip it above 950 kilometers an hour. I've also got to be very careful on my maneuvering, because above 600 kilometers an hour, you can run the risk of actually tearing your own wings off in this plane. It's another plane with fragile wings. You can't maneuver, so you've got to run. The F-84, on the other hand, does not have this problem and has manoeuvred onto my tail. I got very lucky here. The F-84 doesn't appear to be fully upgraded. If it was, it would have actually been able to maintain distance with me. However, it seems that it had to back off, which gave me the opportunity to bring this plane back around and move back on the target. Now, what's the problem with the bomb load? Well, it only gets one, and the R2Y2 is not carrier-based, and there's only a very small collection of maps. This one is the primary one that actually have runways in which you can reload that bomb. So you basically get one shot, and you'll see that the F8F on my tail at the moment is actually being able to maintain speed and distance with me in its dive. I'm going to have to try and bust out 800 kilometers an hour in order to get away from him. I got very lucky manoeuvring here that he didn't manage to put a shot in, because this is the other problem with the R2Y2. It is effectively a flying fuel tank. The entire fuselage is nothing but fuel. If that thing had hit me with one of those 50 caliber rounds, this thing would have lit up like a torch. Take a spike at the Tempest 2 as it goes past. Unfortunately, I didn't lead enough for the low velocity guns and missed target. That's alright. Continuing on the F-84 Thunderjet, that's really the plane that I have to remove in this fight. I've got props that can deal with the props. I need to get rid of this jet. That's my responsibility. So closing in at a kilometre, using the energy retention that this plane does have, and the fact that the F-84 is manoeuvring to get distance, fire shots, miss, dip it through. I'm below 600 so I can manoeuvre safely. Thankfully the F-84's lost a lot of its speed. Long bursts, again, miss. Continuing through, and finally get the target and light him on fire. So there we go. He should be out of the fight now, right? Head back to base, trying to break some distance on the F-8F and the Tempest that's behind me, but the F-84 is burning, but it's climbing away. It looks like the R2Y2 that took hits before has managed to make it to the runway and is currently getting a repair, which is a good thing, and the F-84's fire has gone out, and it's attempting to re-engage. Thankfully I've done enough damage now that it really has no chance of being able to either manoeuvre with me or keep up with me. Its engines are pretty much shot. But you'll notice that F-8F is not falling away anywhere near as fast as you would expect it to while you're flying a jet. Now, I'm only maintaining 550 in that climb angle, but I need to get some altitude so I can dive back. I'm going to run the risk of a head-on with the F-8F here in a second. I need to remove it. 470. This isn't an incredibly high climb angle, and it's losing speed incredibly fast. So the energy retention on this, it's passable for a low-tier jet, but it's not great. It's not that much more superior to the props that it's facing. Line up the shop, and I get incredibly lucky here. I normally don't like doing this because the guns are shotguns. Fire the burst and roll out, and the F-8F flies straight into the shells, so beautiful. With the F8F removed, I can now safely re-engage the F-84 Thunderjet. Now, I said before I didn't like the shell availability, and here's why. 90-degree deflection shot, I put a shell straight into the center of its wing, 30mm shell, and it did bloody nothing. Didn't even slow it down. No noticeable change to its performance at all. So, bring it back around, let's swoop in and we'll do it again. Line him back up. He ducks in underneath, another long burst, another solid hit, another 30mm shell. This one looked like it bounced straight off the cockpit. Did nothing, recorded a hit, didn't kill him. And he ended up putting it into the water. Now, that going into the water I don't think had anything to do with that last shell hitting his aircraft. I think he just put it in and gave up. If I'm entirely honest, the R2Y2 probably isn't that bad a plane. I think my biggest issue is that I've flown so many of the low tier and high tier jet aircraft and know what they fly like that this plane simply has nothing for me that's incredibly interesting. It doesn't do anything particularly well, it just does precisely what it says on the box, and nothing more. For a 6.7 jet, its turn rate is average, its climb rate is average, its dive rate is average, speed and acceleration is average. The bomb load for an aircraft that's marked as a bomber is actually pretty piss poor. With 4 30mm cannons with a 10kg burst mass, this thing should feel like the fist of God every time I pull the trigger. But instead, it doesn't have that effect. It doesn't feel like there's anything particularly powerful in those guns. Landing it is also a major issue on every map that it can get on except this one. Now, this is a plane that doesn't really want to lose speed, and as I said before, it doesn't have air brakes. You've got to pick a wide approach, otherwise you simply won't lose enough speed to slow down. As you can see, I'm down to 0% throttle here, and I'm actually having a lot of issue throwing this plane around to try and get it below 400. I'm still too fast here to safely put the plane down, so I end up having to abort this landing and bring it back around. Now, why am I putting it down for landing? Well, there is one enemy fighter remaining, and he's nicked off into the clouds over the other base. Now, we're not entirely sure where he's gone, whether or not he's going to try and drag this match out. We have managed to prevent the American ground forces from capturing the other runway, however their tanks are rolling in on this one and I don't want to give him a place to land, so I'm trying to bring it to a stop so I can reload and get a bomb and start bombing those tanks, one at a time if necessary. Now you'll see I gun braked to bring this thing to a stop. It's almost a necessity to do so. On the shorter runways this plane really can't put down unless you brake the front landing gear and drag it to a stop. This plane's wheel brakes really don't do anything. Now the most interesting thing about this aircraft is that as far as I can tell this is a fantasy plane. The R2Y2s did exist, specifically the V1 did, however it was never powered by jet engines. The only R2Y2 that I ever found, or that I've ever heard of, was actually powered by props and was intended to get jet engines, but never actually did. So the V1, it is a plane that existed and it's based on what it would have become. The Japanese were in the process of getting ready to fit jet engines to it when they surrendered. The V2 and the V3, however, are two planes that I have not been able to find any historical record for. I've never been able to find any designs for. As far as I can tell, these planes are creations of Gaijin that they've put in because, the Japanese needed some jets. And, I don't actually have a problem with them doing that. The plane itself looks like a design that would have developed out of the V1, so I'm all cool with that. But the lack of performance that it has in an aircraft that could have had such creative freedom, I think what would have been better if Gaijin had given the V2 and the V3 higher levels of performance than what they currently have in game, and then changed their battle rating. So rather than having the V1, V2 and V3 all at 6.7 battle rating, maybe one at 6.7, one at 7.3 and one at battle rating 8. Now Japan has 3 jets over the line, and they all have flight models that, providing, even if they are fantasy, providing they were created in a manner that made them realistic to what the plane would have had in an alternate history environment, I wouldn't have had a problem. Now I would just like to say that this is a unique situation only for the Japanese because they don't really have any aircraft in Era 5, and there's not even really any designs that you can put in an Era 5. They had nothing. They had, between the end of the war, they had what they had, which is already in game, and then they got American aircraft for the Japanese Self-Defense Force as we went into the Korean War. In the middle they had nothing, which is a massive problem with the Japanese Era 5 and the aircraft availability in it. So this is one of those, probably the only situation in War Thunder where I could say that a fantasy aircraft created correctly is probably the right thing. Any other nation, no, they've got planes that they can use. So 2 tanks bombed, and I bring it back around to land it on the runway and grab a fresh bomb to get the next tank. The next pass, if I can take out 2 more, should be enough that the base defences will take out the remaining tanks and prevent capture. However, I never actually need to put the plane down. The missing enemy fighter dives out of the clouds and gets taken out by the other R2Y2, and that was the end of the match. So let's check out the results. So, 3rd place for the team with 3 kills and 2 tanks taken out. Bomber Rescuer, Professional X2, Shadow Strike Streak X2, Windstreak X3, and Terror of the Sky. 64,035 Silver Lions. And it comes down to, well, the cover is now complete and 9,259 research points for modifications. Not a bad match overall, and probably one of the better ones I've had in this plane. Previous to getting that engine upgrade, I found this aircraft was extremely vulnerable to everything it faced, so that engine upgrade is a must for competitive usage of the plane. So, the R2Y2, not a bad match, but a pretty average aircraft. I can see why some people like it and do incredibly good in it, but with the available options that I have, I would take, well, almost anything except the Yak jets over this thing into combat. It's just, it doesn't do enough. It doesn't spark that excitement in me to fly like some of the other planes do. The V2 is definitely an improvement in performance over the V1, and I'm yet to actually take my V3 out. So hopefully the V3, I do like the look of the V3 more. Hopefully the V3 will perform better, and I'll find that bit of excitement. But for the moment, the V2 is just what it is. Anyways, ladies and gents, hope you enjoyed the video. Click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.